Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update. Viewpoint.
Money FM 89.3. Welcome to Viewpoint, where we go beyond the headlines to unpack what's really shaping Singapore today. I'm Lynlee. Now, a recent Straits Times feature asked a provocative question. Do Gen Zs still know how to party? Now, the piece painted a vivid picture of Singapore's changing nightlife, from free entry nights and Telegram promos to coffee-fueled sober raves that pack shopping malls. But beneath the hype lies a deeper shift. Is this just a new trend in aesthetics? Or does it signal something fundamental about how young Singaporeans socialize, spend, and connect? Joining me now is the journalist behind that piece, Straits Times live reporter, Teo Kai Xiang. Hi, Kai Xiang. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, you spoke to DJs, club operators, Gen Zs themselves for your article, from marquee to beans and beats. So when you take a step back, what's the bigger story here? What really connects all these changes?
Yeah, I think nightlife has long been one of these third spaces distinct from home and work, where people come together to socialize and have really spontaneous connections. And I think that's something that people are really kind of mourning the loss of a little as that goes away. When young people say that they feel Singapore is boring, I think what they mean is that they want more options that are exciting, social, fun, and they feel short on these options, yeah.
Okay, so they haven't really abandoned nightlife then. They've reshaped it?
Yes, definitely. I think there is a big part of them that feel very priced out by nightlife offerings and have become a lot more intentional in the way that they go out. And that intentionality means like a lot of social media research, going to less events, less of a club hopping, bar hopping vibe, things like that, yeah.
So it's no longer routine, it's selective, and I suppose that must change, how operators think about attracting crowds greatly.
Yeah, I think one thing that really came true in my story is the greater reliance on really aggressive cost cutting. Now it becomes more of a norm for nightclubs to offer free entry, particularly on themed nights that are dedicated to young people. I think Marquee has been holding these monthly theme nights where it's free entry and free flow drinks all the way until midnight, which really speaks to the kind of strategy that's necessary to fill venues now. Yeah.
Okay, so in your piece, you quoted Gen Zs in their early 20s, calling themselves retired club goers. I think that was quite amusing, and that really stood out to me. So do you think partying today has become more niche, I suppose, no longer a rite of passage, but something more subcultural?
Yes, definitely. I think there's been a growing awareness of healthy living and the benefits of sobriety, a lot more so than there were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And you really see that in just the way that young people discuss partying now. It is something that's very widely known that, there's a hangover, there's a lot of health harms. So a lot of people really surprised me too that really young, early 20s people are yep, I'm a retired club goer, I don't want to spend as much money, and yeah.
Well, so I'm trying to get my head around this, Kai Xiang. This means what was once a shared youth milestone is pretty much now more of a lifestyle choice.
Yes, definitely. I think it's also become a much more siloed off activity. I think in the past, there was a lot more of this spontaneous, let's just go out on a Friday night. We know where we're going to start, but we don't really know where we're going to end.
Yes.
I think these days, because of the health consciousness, the cost consciousness, people often plan out where they're going to pregame, usually in private, usually not at a bar. Then they pick out the one place that they're going to go to for that night, usually without a lot of crossover with other random strangers that they're going to meet. And then at the end of that one place that they go to, they go home. It's become a lot more intentional and a lot more, I guess, a lot less spontaneous. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds very disciplined in a way. And you quoted someone, talking about costs, you quoted someone saying $80 barely covers cab fare, and another who felt out of place without bottle service. From rising entry fees to transport costs, are we seeing nightlife become a social divide where only those who can afford it get to participate fully?
Yes, definitely. I think this kind of social divide has definitely always existed in some form. Well-paid white-collar workers and expats have always been a really big driver of the local nightlife scene, especially in the city center. But I think that divide has become a lot more pronounced now. I think in the past, young people were expected to fill venues, if not necessarily contribute a lot of revenues. But I think the difficulty now is that it's difficult to bring them in to fill the venues, which makes it, I guess, interesting because there's less of an exciting vibe, even for the people who can't afford it, even for the people who do want to party. So that social divide really plays out in a really interesting way. Yeah.
Okay, if you think about it, it's not just financial, is it? It also shapes who feels like they belong in a way.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, and that sense of belonging or exclusion, I think it cuts deeper than just the price of a drink. It defines whether you feel part of the scene at all.
Yeah, I think the Gen Z entrepreneurs I spoke to who are creating these daytime-oriented, very wellness-oriented parties, they definitely speak of inclusivity as a really big benefit because people don't have to spend a lot at these events, which kind of makes it less financially sustainable.
Okay.
But it also means that people have less reasons to feel excluded and they tend to bond over things which don't necessarily require them to have alcohol in their system and just generally have a lot of shared interest in a particular activity like yoga, matcha, or coffee.
Very, very interesting. And some of these newer parties, like you mentioned, sober raves, matcha events, are incredibly photogenic and well-branded. To what extent do you think these formats are driven by real shifts in values like wellness and intentionality versus just tapping into what's trendy, or Instagrammable?
Yeah, to be really honest, I think the bigger draw to these sober parties is more the affordability than necessarily like health consciousness. We're still a culture of people that loves bubble tea, right? So it's not that much the wellness thing. But I think, so it's pretty well known that social media algorithms deprioritize things which are seen as less family friendly. So things with alcohol, things like really hard partying, for example, are less likely to be visible on social media. Whereas things which have a bit more of a social media ready aesthetic, like yoga with a fun after party or coffee clubbing, I think those are more likely to go viral. And that really feeds into the way that people understand what a good time is. When a lot of young people think of a good time, I think now they really associate it with that, coffee clubbing in front of a camera, really brightly lit, as opposed to a place that's dark, dingy,
And I suppose for that kind of visibility, it's become its own form of currency, without it even genuine movements, I think those risk fading out.
Yeah, I think something that was really resonant that a long-time nightlife operator told me was that a lot of people really do want to chase this aesthetic of being seen to be out, having fun, and partying. But at the same time, being able to go to the gym the next day, being able to be really fit, being next to their matcha. So I think there very much is the social media aesthetic really drives this as well. Yeah.
Now, going deeper into this, you also wrote about Telegram groups, TikTok collectives, even private Insta as being the new way to discover parties. How has that digital layer changed the nightlife experience?
I think it's definitely become a lot more subcultural. I think in the past, when these layers didn't really exist, people generally filtered to kind of the same major established venues and then they visited the new places whenever they open.
Right.
Now it's more so if you know, then you know, where there's a huge, very disparate collection of different Telegram channels, Instagram pages where typically you would only follow if you're really tuned into that genre of music, a particular artist, or that subculture. Yeah.
Sounds like it's promoting exclusivity almost.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that, but it's also, I think, just a greater degree of personalization, which I think is a good thing, because I think a lot of complaints about nightlife in the past is that, I don't necessarily want to drink that much, or I don't necessarily even like this kind of music. But now the level of personalization means that if you really like the super clubs like Zouk or Mark, you can go for that. But if you like a more alternative vibe or a more sober vibe, those also cater to you and exist as well. Yeah.
Okay. Now, in your reporting, nightlife operators were telling you they're giving out free entries, free drinks, even $1 cover charges just to bring in young crowds. What are they themselves saying about whether that's sustainable or not?
The operators?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think they stay pretty tight-lipped about this with me because, for obvious reasons. But one operator did tell me that it is a concerning trend, I think, and it speaks to how the amount of effort that is necessary to overcome that reluctance that has to do with planning your night out. I think a lot of reluctance comes from the fact that late night transportation is really expensive. Individual drinks are really expensive. And a lot of people, when they're making that decision-making calculus of like whether to go out at all, even the cover charge can, like taking away that cover charge can be a big difference. But that also means that one of the core revenue streams for these businesses, which is alcohol cover charges, they become less reliable. And it's not something that I think businesses with higher overhead costs and less capital can consistently do.
Yeah, which puts the industry at a crossroads, I think. You can win Gen Z over, but it often comes at a financial cost.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned before we went to air that you worked overseas prior to this. So I'm sure you've seen how nightlife scenes abroad, maybe from Amsterdam to Berlin to Bangkok, evolve differently. So how does Singapore's Gen Z party culture compare? Are we unique or following global patterns?
There is a lot of it that follows global patterns, like a trend towards sobriety is one big global trend that all alcohol producers are seeing now. But I think the way that Singapore's, especially its Gen Z party culture differs, is that there is a lot less room for spontaneity. In a lot of other contexts, you need a lot less permits or a lot less licenses to just put a spontaneous gathering like in a park together. Here, it is not so simple. There's a much more prolonged process. There's a process that involves a lot more money from the business end, which means that it also tends to be less affordable. And I think that's one of the big differences that stand out to me. Yeah.
Okay, so it kind of kills the fun a little bit.
Yeah. I think one of the big changes that I feel I'm seeing with how party culture is changing in Singapore is that the spontaneity is definitely going away. I think now you need to pre-plan your night, sometimes weeks in advance. Sometimes you get early bird tickets, a lot of research, a lot of coordination.
Wow.
Yeah, I think in the past, this was less of a thing. And that spontaneity is something that's not just good for business. You want people to go out and be freer with their wallets.
That's right.
But it's also something that's really vital for a kind of social connection that you can only find through nightlife. Yeah.
Too true. And we've seen younger Gen Zs pulling back from, as you mentioned, alcohol-heavy late nights. Well, some older professionals like myself are also turning to earlier wellness-driven events. So do you think nightlife is evolving into something that could actually appeal across generations?
Definitely, yeah. I think the rise of these wellness-driven activities and also like the rise of parties that just end earlier and start earlier, it definitely it creates a more inclusive vibe. Operators do tell me that young parents, for example, really appreciate sets that end before midnight because it means that they can get a good night's sleep and they don't have to spend too much on like childcare, for example. So these are things that matter to more than just Gen Z as well.
Really, really cool, which is very interesting because what looks like a youth trend might actually be shaping a nightlife model that bridges generations.
Definitely.
Right. Okay, before we let you go, let me put this directly. Is this Gen Z evolution of partying a cultural upgrade or is it a sign that the fun is being priced out of Singapore?
I think it's hard to say if like a culture is going to be better or worse. I do want to say that I think for a sizable group of people who have always wanted their nights out to be more sober and to be less alcohol-driven, they are definitely better off than they used to be 10, 20, 30 years ago. But I think there's also a sizable chunk of people that do want the very affordable, very cheap, very spontaneous nights out, and they do want to be able to binge. And I think that's something that we're kind of seeing the loss of, this late night spontaneous culture.
So what do you think that the future depends on in terms of the nightlife future?
If I was to make a guess, I think that there'll probably be a bit of a crunch in the sector. There'll be a bit of a thinning of the herd as nightlife businesses understand how to adapt the new norms before eventually they kind of figure out their winning recipe that balances affordability but at the same time sustainability for their own operations. Yeah.
Inclusivity as well as innovation,
Yes.
I think. All right. Thank you so much for your views, Kai Xiang. There was Straits Times journalist Teo Kai Xiang sharing his views on what Singapore's Gen Z nightlife says about youth, culture, and the economics of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Lovely having you with us. Now, if you haven't already, do check out his full article on the Straits Times. It's a fascinating read with all the color, voices, and detail behind today's nightlife shifts. Now, earlier we heard from Teo Kai Xiang of the Straits Times, who gave us a journalist's take on how Singapore's nightlife is evolving, from the rising cost of a night out to Gen Z's preference for wellness and alternative social spaces. But how is this being felt by those actually in the business of nightlife? Joining me now is someone who's been at the heart of the scene as a DJ, event organizer, and founder of Revelry Entertainment. He is Patrick Lewis, also known to many as DJ LeNerd. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Now, let's start with what you're seeing on the ground. How does Gen Z approach nightlife differently from us older crowd?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation with my girlfriend just yesterday, actually. Like, I think for us that are older than Gen Z, that means not considering Gen Alpha, right? We live most of our lives offline. And then online was just a very recent thing, you know. But for them, I think online is a big part of their life. So I think they lead their life with that in mind. They are like almost already plugged in. So that is like the first in mind when they lead their life and they expectations out of parties. So if you look at TikTok, right, you can literally see the best parties in the world at the palm of your hand. Every scroll is the best content. Yeah, so they will expect high expectations out of a simple party experience that we can enjoy. I guess we are maybe much simpler. So now we need higher levels of experiences, more gimmicks, more entertainment in order to keep them locked in, keep them attracted, coming back to our parties. Done with the days where it's just music plus alcohol. It's done.
Okay, so let's talk more about that. I know you are a founder of Revelry Entertainment. Tell us more about that. What do you do to come up with different types of entertainment?
So, as a musician, you are constantly relying on other people to get income, like people to book you, people to sign your music. So oftentimes it is in your best interest if you can take things into your own hands to create your own events, create your own parties, and you don't have to kind of like live under the rules of another organization. So you can create your own style, you know. So that's the basis of its genesis, I guess. Yeah, and then of course I'm already 35 this year, and then I'm in the middle generation, right, where I can relate to the Gen Z, but I also have the spirit and the roots of our parents, you know. So I guess we have to kind of, for lack of a better word, tap into the cringe, because in our parents' time, we are so obsessed with quality of work that we do not dare to shout about it or have a strong opinion about something.
Right.
Whereas now, it's content quantity is so huge that if you don't stand out, they won't even care what kind of quality you have, which gives rise to the importance of a thumbnail on YouTube or a 1 to 3 second hook on TikTok. So that has become like almost 50% of where the effort is being placed. And then I would say probably a lot of people will not agree, but the quality, right, mean less as compared to back in the day. Which is also why you see that now a lot of parties still constantly play old music, because they are clearly much better, you know. Yeah, as compared to like the fast fashion music, quote unquote, that musicians are now churning out, whether is it to feed the social media algorithm or to like feed the label demands. Yeah, everybody's just churning out huge quantity of stuff, yeah, just to hopefully something hit. And then how do we engage Gen Z? Well, we have to kind of get down on our high horses, because at first we are like industry experts, we are like the OGs, right? And then they are the new players, but at the end of the day, we need to know that partying, clubbing is a young people activity. You can, sure, you know, as a 35-year-old, I can constantly promote to my 35 to 40-year-old friends, right? But by 12 o'clock, they'll be like, I'm tired already, I need to go back home already, you know? So you still need the energy of the youths to power the dance floor at night, right? And if they don't prefer to come out at night, you have to create something towards their preference. But why did it slowly evolve to eventually nightlife, it becomes a thing, you know? I guess people still crave that, you know, intimate, late at night, more relaxed kind of environment. Yeah, so it kind of offers like a duality in the entertainment space where you can have early offerings, afternoon offerings, or late night offerings. But from DJing weekly, I can see that it's slowly coming back already.
Okay. So these sort of curated experiences, is music still a big draw?
Wow. As a musician, right, I hate to say this, but music is always supposed to be like the accompaniment. In the whole entire party, the main thing is the social setting.
Okay.
Yeah, back in the day, DJs were like, people is like, huh, got DJ? You know, such thing. Because the DJs were always so background, but ever since, YouTube DJing, Boiler Room, or music festivals, they put DJs as the main act. And then everybody just crowding around the DJ, looking at what the DJ is doing. They just suddenly become the first of thought, front of mind, or something like that. Yeah. But music has always been the secondary element. The main element is the people. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
the people. Let's talk about that. What do you mean by the people?
So if you want to go out, have a good time, meet your friends, a lot of people can say that, okay, now we got Microsoft Teams, we don't need to meet people anymore. But the face-to-face interaction still, a lot of people prefers that because you can see one another, you can feel their gaze, that kind of thing, which is like still very difficult to replicate with technology unless like one day we have some hologram, Yeah.
Okay. Now, I was asking you about what kind of people, because I'm just thinking that this generation seems to be more health conscious. So are you seeing that change, in terms of how events are being curated?
I wouldn't say health conscious, but more of like, oh, everybody's doing this, I also want to do this. I don't want to seem like, I'm like counter culture, right? And I see that these sober parties, they are very okay with like speaking out and having their opinion like, hey, alcohol is bad and everything, right? But I feel like everything is okay in moderation, right? Like you don't see like a person that eats meat and vegetable mix, right? Tell you that, hey, I eat everything, but a vegan will always tell you that he's vegan, Yeah.
So do you think that alcohol is bad because it's expensive?
I think alcohol is bad, or anything is bad, like sweets, candies, or what, in large doses, right? But we also have to admit the fact that alcohol is powering or the social currency in all these kind of things. You want to book like a famous act, or you want to like book a big venue, it costs a lot of money, and alcohol is the one that facilitates everybody's pay, or this bartender got a salary, this person that's doing the lighting. A large amount of it comes from alcohol. And yes,
actually, I'm asking this because I'm just wondering whether the Gen Zs are shunning alcohol because, most of them probably can't afford to have a lot of alcohol.
Probably. Could be. Yeah. Maybe there's some like a percentage, right? Like, oh, I can't get it, or this is bad, like sour grapes,
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't think necessarily all, just a small, loud minority. Play hard, how can you work hard? That's something that I realize.
Yes,
I'm just
but playing hard these days costs money, and many establishments, they blame rising prices.
Correct.
And, for keeping people away.
Yeah.
Do you think that is the main issue here, affordability?
Affordability is definitely a huge factor. Okay, recently I did a podcast with a booking manager. It's basically two main factors, right, affecting this whole entire thing. It's rent. Rent is basically the mother of all evil, right? Rent cost. Okay. And then another one is the infrastructure behind nightlife. Because COVID, right? So a lot of people that used to do nightlife no longer exist. So nightlife relies predominantly very strongly on this thing called combo bookings. So like, for example, if I have a famous act, right? I book the famous act, fly from US to Singapore alone. It's very expensive, right? But if I can guarantee them like, okay, you know what? Let me partner up with my Southeast Asian compatriots like, Malaysia, Thailand or whatever, right? Have multiple stops, then we can significantly cut down the cost because I can then tell the manager, hey, you know what? I'm giving you 5 or 6 shows. Then you give me like a 15% discount or something like that. But because everybody else is closing down, then maybe you're not closed down, right? Oh no, now you don't have that network to do that combo deal anymore, and it's suddenly impossible to book these big acts. And back to our initial question, right? The expectation is so high because everybody can get the best entertainment on their tip of their palms on TikTok, So when they see like, hey, you're not booking A-lister, you're booking a B-list act, and then they suddenly not that impressed, and they might not come and patronage your event.
So what do you do?
That's why that's the $1 million question, So we have to package it with experience. Like, hey, example, I would like to plug my own thing. I'm doing a collaboration with Tanuki Raw. As you can tell, right, not only nightlife is not doing well, but F&B in general, everybody's not doing well, basically,
Okay. So help me understand this.
Yes.
Is there a nightlife model, that's foolproof, throw in
Because I think
at this time?
I feel like nightlife, they already have staff trained for a particular way of operating. It's very difficult to suddenly like, hey, let's become like a day club, and then we start food focus and everything. So instead of bartenders, you need chef already. It's like different skill set, right? I presume. Yeah. Yeah. So I would love that more day concept can pop up, right? But there are so many operational challenges that, I feel like even with my limited knowledge, I cannot really provide much insights into. Yeah.
Okay, sounds like day clubbing is the way to go.
It is getting more popular, but I would say evening clubbing is a thing. Like
Evening,
a
like
dinner
from what time?
transitions to drink kind of thing. So it's I'm having dinner at a spot, right? And then they will maybe by 8 o'clock. Okay, guys, we're going to clear the chairs away so you guys can have like a stand-up drinking kind of thing.
Oh, sounds good.
And then we can end by 10, that kind.
Okay,
And we
okay.
don't need to spend money on cab. We can still take MRT.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really, operators, they have to diversify, think about brand partnerships and probably community-led events. What about merchandise?
This is a little bit difficult because merchandise, you need to have like brand loyalty from your community, right? Then they will buy your merch. I don't know, by merchandise, do you mean like merch, right? Something like that, right?
Yep.
And then another thing that I noticed, right, is that like, for example, a YouTuber, they monetize based on the views that they get from the video, right? But those views are definitely not enough for them to sustain month on month, especially if they hire editors and whatever. So that's why they work with sponsors. So working with sponsors is definitely the way to go for the venue to sustain itself. And I think with everything, right, initially there will be a saturation where everybody want to come in because, they think this is a lucrative market. And then they realize how challenging it is. So 99% will bow out. And then the 1% that stay will reap the benefits. Yeah.
Okay, so far we've been talking about operators' side of things. What about customer side of things? Is there anything Gen Z can do to help keep the scene alive?
Yeah, that's something that I never really thought of because I'm not really like customer side, right? I'm always the organizer side because we are constantly.
You don't go clubbing?
I go, but like as an organizer, so I get a lot of like freebies and
I
stuff because it's like
see,
I help you, you help me kind of thing,
Okay.
But okay, like for us in our club, certain nights we give free entries or complimentary drinks to kind of like lessen the cost to encourage people to come out more. That's one way we are doing it. But how can people support? Maybe I would say the simplest way that doesn't cost a single cent is like if you see your band or your DJ promoting something, just give it a share or a like and share with your friends. That's a free way, right? And then with every, 200 shares, probably one person will come down, that kind of probability, right? Yeah, so the more shares means like more awareness and higher chance of it being a success. Or
Sharing events online and giving
word of
feedback
mouth.
as well as adding comments. And I suppose supporting local DJs.
Yeah, supporting local DJs as well, like such a underrated thing. Yeah, everybody love to support a famous person that don't even know who they are. But there are the people that remember your name, but you don't support them because they are not famous or not everyone's opinion,
That's right. DJ LeNerd, what do you think Singapore's nightlife will look like maybe in 5 years' time?
Oh my God. It's like so evolving in such a erratic or like a unpredictable way and fashion, Like when COVID just ended, we thought like, oh my God, everybody's like revenge spending is it's going to be so happening. But after revenge spending happened 3, 4, 5 months later, then you start to go on a downtrend. And then now after 4 years later, then slowly start to go on an uptrend. So it's so hard to predict, right? But I think at the end of the day, we need to kind of do two things, I believe, from my point of view. Obviously, your expert F&B owners, club owners, they will definitely have a more experienced take. But from my point of view as a musician, I feel like you need to constantly engage your fan base so that whatever happens in the environment, they can be your constant. So at least you have like a base number of people supporting you through thick and thin. That's number one. And secondly, right, is you must always keep a keen eye on what is happening in the space and in the socio-economic kind of environment. You need to be very situationally aware. And then you need to adapt your craft or your business to how people want to consume it. Because you want to make things easier for people so that they can enjoy fast free, right? And then you make their life easy, then they can make your life easy, I guess.
So you don't think that we'll see mega clubs surviving? More smaller, more agile,
Actually,
more diverse,
mega
perhaps?
club operates different from smaller clubs. I think smaller clubs operate probably in the mindset that, we need to make money to survive next month. Then next month's agenda is the same. But maybe for mega club, it is just one small piece out of their mega empire. And it can be a loss leader. Yeah, it's just an entertainment for all their other pieces of the puzzle, their hotels, resort, restaurants, casino, or whatever. And that's just one of the playground. Yeah, they make money off of the other pieces.
So you think there's still space for both in this landscape?
Of course. Of course.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you think that nightlife is coming back too slowly, but it is coming back.
Yep.
So you don't think that the good old days of partying is over? We're just entering a different chapter.
Yes, definitely. Nightlife, at first I thought it was dead. I was very sad for a period of time, but then I realized that it's actually just evolving into different forms and people would like to consume it differently because 2 short years of COVID, 3 months of circuit breaker really alter the human behavior a lot, Yeah.
So something like a remix of nightlife.
I think it's like an evolution, I guess. Yeah, and then, I don't know, who knows, right? With the advancement of like AI and virtual reality, maybe we are just gonna be at home, lying down on our couch and plugged in. We don't even leave our homes and then we can meet our friends.
Interesting. Right. On that note, thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing your views with us. Very entertaining. Patrick Lewis, also known as DJ LeNerd, founder of Revelry Entertainment and one of the key voices shaping the nightlife scene here in Singapore. And that wraps up our 2-part Viewpoint special on how Gen Z is transforming nightlife from values to venues. You've been listening to Viewpoint on Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.